Okay, guys.
Ah, damn, you're not even doing the full 5 minute intro?
No. I'm skipping the intro
Oh.
thing for time issues, time related issues. So, welcome back, everyone. Anonymous buys back, episode over 9,000. Uh, yeah, honestly,
It's over 9,000!
we kept keeping like track of the episode. We don't know what number it is, but we do know we have Commander X in, and he's got like a huge announcement tonight. So we're actually very happy to have him in. Like, I think it's like literally tomorrow it's going to happen. So we are just in time to make this.
Yes, indeed. We're going to jump into the live streaming fray. It's something I talked about doing for years. Trying to do my own show, and lately, since sort of COVID has been around, I've noticed a huge influx of channels doing live streaming and doing content, and I just feel like now might be a time when people might actually watch it. So. Seems like a good move. Mark is going to be one of my guests tomorrow. Certainly, I haven't had a chance to ask Tyler, but he's certainly welcome. Steve is going to be on with me, and our theme is just going to be we're going to call the show "Friends of X Fireside." So just kind of casual, sitting, get my feet wet again. Going to help ease me back into the meat grinder known as online content provision,
Yeah. Did a lot change since you stopped? I don't know. I do know the censorship got a lot worse, but in the whole podcasting scene, I don't know. It is just goes on and on. Like we.
Oh, it's very bad. I've been, and I guess I can kind of talk a little bit about this, but I've been during my downtime, my healing time, I've been using streaming on gaming, streaming games.
Oh, yeah.
A lot like Chelsea Manning. In fact, she inspired me to give it a try, and so I've kind of still had my feet wet. And even within the gaming genre of streaming, it's become so horrible that streamers everywhere in the genre are paranoid to say absolutely anything that might jerk Twitch or jerk YouTube the wrong way and get their accounts canceled. Of course, a lot of those guys, they make their living from doing that. It's not my personal approach to it is to try to make millions, but there are guys making a living off it. A substantial amount of income is on the line for these cats, and really all they're doing is playing games. But one politically incorrect phrase, and the next thing you know, you've lost your entire living, can be gone literally in a flash of an eye. And I think something needs to be done to protect people from that sort of arbitrary, like what happened to Mark. I couldn't believe I couldn't find it. I logged in today for the first time in a year on Twitter, and Mark's Twitter is gone. I'm like, what the fuck? What the hell is going on here, man? And
Yeah, it's just gone. No
just
explanation, nothing.
right, and that's the thing, and then you are silenced, and it is a very effective silencing. The unfortunate thing is we've all known this for years. In the early years of Anonymous, we didn't want to admit how powerful Twitter was. But we all knew, mostly because we had plenty of freedom back then, so it didn't really matter. We could say what we wanted on Twitter, but nowadays people are very terrified, and me and Steve were talking about it, and I think it's a really sad state of affairs that they both A, have us by the balls like that, and B, are actually arbitrarily just bouncing people, platforming people. I warned about this. I released a statement even during my downtime or whatever. I gave Nat a statement, and I said, here, tweet this link out, and I was very clear that I think that this problem begins when you start sanctioning and cheerleading for other people to be censored. The minute you start clapping your hands because all of these Trumpites and all these Trump folks and these conservatives, they're all getting bounced from their platform. The minute you start applauding for that, you are literally applauding for your own eventual doom. Because it's always going to be the case that once they get away with that, they're going to come for any speech that is disruptive or that they don't like. So I still really feel strongly, and people hate me for it. They absolutely hate my stance on this, but I really feel that the deplatforming, even of the most egregious offenders, it serves absolutely no purpose. They'll find another platform to talk to their own people, and meanwhile, what you've done is you made it so they're hidden. You made it so it becomes they all creep into the dark corners of the internet, and we'll never be able to ferret them out. I like my evil right out in plain sight, where I can take a look at it in the eye and then deal with it however I choose to deal with it. But I think that pushing all of that movement, all of those really freakish people, I agree, into the pushing them into the dark corners of the dark web. That's not going to serve anybody. I mean, that's just going to push it underground and make it harder to deal with.
Well, but it also it adds the element of they get a hold up a bad guy and say, "Look, we got rid of the bad guy," while at the same time they're silencing, tens of thousands of activist voices that are legitimately trying to get the word out about some heinous shit. For example, when Alex Jones got deplatformed, over 10,000 like pro-Palestinian Facebook accounts got taken out. A bunch of the Standing Rock pages got taken out. Like
That's the new shtick. That's their new shtick. Their new shtick is we're going to balance it. Okay, so we're in even.
Well, they don't even announce it.
Because they're going to balance it. I said they're going to balance it.
Yeah.
What they're saying is, okay, this way they can argue that they're right on all cases, because they can say, well, we took down all those Anon accounts, but look over here, we took down Alex Jones's account. See, we're being fair about it. We're being, so that's the problem with censorship. The minute you condone it for anybody, regardless of how much you hate their speech, you literally condone it for your own speech being censored. And what we're seeing, at least amongst those of us in our community, and by our community I mean activists online and people who want to make a difference in the world, what we're seeing is just that. They're using it now as a blunt weapon, and the excuse is, well, look, we're deplatforming all these other people on this side of the fence, so we're being reasonable and fair about it. But there's nothing reasonable and fair about censorship ever. And not only that, but it really does a disservice to groups like I think they're called Pink Unicorn, and other groups like this that have
Unicorn Riot.
Unicorn Riot, that have made huge inroads, and with a lot of help from Anonymous, and a lot of also Anonymous doing its own work as well. But a lot of people have done a lot of work to unmask these Nazis and to really ruin their life. I mean, you can really fuck a dude's life up if he's a school teacher or a fireman or a cop or whatever, or even just a regular factory worker. In many cases, if you reveal their deep involvement in these really extreme movements, and it's happened. We've seen it happen time and time again. We've seen people's lives destroyed for adopting these hateful, horrible ideals. And the way that was accomplished was because of an open internet where these people feel free, legitimately so, to post whatever the fuck they want. And by use of that, people can track these guys down. And this goes back to what I was saying. I like my evil out in the open, where I can see it and deal with it. If you push it into the underground, none of us are going to know these people are coming. And that was a problem before this all started. Before this whole resurgence of these people, did you ever know? Would you know where to go find the KKK? Would you know where to go look up and try to fuck with neo-Nazis? No, you didn't, because they were all in the underground. They were all keeping to themselves and keeping quiet about it, and they didn't have their panties in a bunch. I really feel that this Trump thing, this is another silver lining of Trump, really, is to show people in America how many of these folks there really are. When they start holding rallies, when they feel free enough to go out into the streets by the thousands and hold rallies, I cheer. And I'll tell you why. Because now people around the world and people in America can see, oh my God, these aren't just a few bad apples believing an extreme ideal. This is like my neighbors is out here marching. What the fuck? And so I think again, openness and transparency and being able to see everything is always going to be the way, guys. It's just it might sound like a religious belief in a way, but it really kind of is. It's just that I have faith that transparency will always win the day, no matter how weird that transparency looks, no matter how uncomfortable it is. It's still better to see these people than to not see them. I don't see how people don't get that, but apparently people feel that the minute you can't see them in your Twitter timeline, these people are gone. That's just not how it works. I mean, they're still there. It's just now you have no clue what they're fucking planning. You have no way to counter their marches and their rallies. You have nothing to go on. They will start to surprise you. They will start to come out of nowhere and surprise you because they're no longer a part of the public conversation. And I just think that's a wrong approach on so many levels. So many levels.
Yeah, in that sense, they're shooting themselves in the foot, right? I mean, we're not going anywhere. If they censor us from Twitter, we're still going to be there. We're going to podcast every time, and we're still on other platforms. It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't matter to your audience because they know where to find you. Where it does matter, again, is it starts to make you invisible. So we're no longer getting mom and pop, housewife, factory worker in America tuning into ABB. And, you know, as you know, we do have that now. We have a huge audience of just normal, everyday people. Some of them are even Trump supporters. A lot of your viewers, Mark, whether you want to admit it or not, are Trump supporters. I know that for a fact because a lot of my supporters are Trump supporters,
Yeah, I have
and
no
they
problem
want.
with that. I mean,
And
those are
why? Of
people.
course not. Of course
Those are the
not.
people
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
educate on things, right? I mean,
Exactly.
You're
Exactly. Those
learning
are
here, buddy.
exactly. And you see, that's taken away from you. This again, it's about making people disappear. So. I really feel like we've reached a very strange and dangerous area. I really feel that Anonymous and a certain of us that have some technical skills within Anonymous, I really still feel there's a solution to be had in all this. We need to build our own stuff and make that shit famous. But the problem with that is always going to come down to money. And me and Mark were talking about it before. I'll give you just one example. I could put a streaming service up in about 48 hours if somebody gave me enough money. Literally, I wouldn't have to write a line of code. I can just grab fucking open source streaming service software and load it to a fucking Linux server, and we would be in business. The problem then comes in is that it's going to cost a huge amount of money to buy a cloud server big enough to be able to scale up to the usership. How do you do that? How do you raise that kind of money? You've got one option. You can go the route Susie Dawson is going, and trying to do a commercial sort of thing where you're going to charge everybody $5. Well, I'm not dissing Susie in her efforts. I think it's an amazing effort on her part. I'm very proud of Susie. I will always stand by Susie Dawson and be proud of her. But I really do feel like it's not an approach that's going to be successful. You can't charge people and hope to have the mass adoption that you would have if you can just put it out there. So it's always going to come down to the bucks. We can build our own world, but it's difficult to get. It's challenging to get people to understand how beneficial it is and what that benefit is worth in terms of their own dollars. It's that's always been a disconnect in activism. That's always been a problem, and it continues to be a problem. There are solutions out there, but and then there are people like Kim.com who have the money but don't want to get right with it and and let the smart people do it. He wants all the fame and glory for himself. So, I don't know. It's a difficult conundrum, but there is a solution. But it's always going to come down to dollars and cents. Always.
hey, and on that note, you are starting something new, right? And that is what we're are supposed to talk about
Yeah,
tonight. I mean, there's a big
yeah.
thing happening, right? I mean,
Well, I of course I announced on Twitter, Nat this morning, the head of the Friends of X committee down here, the group of Mexican activists who have been supporting me completely, guys. I mean, literally everything that needs done in my life. My bills are even prepaid. I don't even open mail or pay bills, guys. Everything is taken care of for me. These folks have been incredible. They are very committed to move forward in the idea that they're going to provide for me and my dogs, my little family, everything I need down here. So this morning, Nat dictated to me her last tweet, as some people know, but not everybody now. I think some people have come back and didn't realize, but I did not have command of my Twitter account. I had turned it over to Natalie and the Friends of X to help raise the funds for that very great generosity that they've shown towards me. And they've been utilizing it for that and some free, a little bit of free Julian stuff, which they had my permission to do. Okay, guys, hey. I'm streaming. Thank you. Um, and so she sent the last tweet out thanking everybody who have been incredibly supportive of their efforts to take care of me down here and then turn the account over to me. And it was quite an amazing moment. I wasn't sure what to tweet first. So I was just like, fuck the IDF, fuck the Colombian police, and fuck the Myanmar Junta. Now let's get to work. And that was my first tweet.
That's a great place to start.
That's my first tweet in almost a year, guys. It's been great actually to dive back into it, to see everybody again, talk to everybody, and to be a part of it. I want to make sure that I don't bite off more than I can chew, so I'm going to commit to two things. I'm going to commit to taking my Twitter account back over and doing that. Everybody who knows anything about me knows I'm pretty decent on Twitter. And so also I'm going to do a weekly video show, a streaming show like Steve and Mark and everybody else have. I don't know what they call them now, but a live stream, I guess is best description. Starting every Saturday, starting tomorrow, from noon until 4 p.m. Central Time, and we're going to have guests for hopefully for my first guest next Saturday. When I start doing it like for real, when I actually start having real guests and everything, we're going to have Keith McHenry, hopefully, founder of Food Not Bombs. We haven't confirmed that yet, but I'm almost certain Keith will say yes. And
Oh, he will. I got a yes by text, but I haven't got to talk to him yet because I didn't have 3 hours.
but so we're gonna that's what we're gonna do next week. This week, the first episode. I just wanted to get my feet. I just want to get my feet wet, and also, to be honest with you, I missed you guys, and so I want to be with my friends. It's a little bit
Aw.
it's a little bit unnerving to step back into this particular spotlight again. After so long of having my privacy and not having to think about certain things. So it'll be nice to just have the support of my friends around me. And we're going to call it the Friends of X Fireside Chat. We're just going to, in fact, I'm going to put a little crackling fire down in the corner of the stream. And so we'll have like a real fire. And we're just going to sit around and talk. About whatever crosses our mind. I suppose we kind of got to mention the fact that they released a motion picture documentary of my life, which is like, sort of unusual and weird, right? So we'll talk about that, but we just talk about whatever we want to talk about and get used to it. And then starting next week, next Saturday, we'll get serious and get to work, and I'll start having some guests on. I really feel like I want to get people on that that really deserve a movie a lot more than me. And that's Keith Henry is number one on that list of people who 100 times more than me deserve to have a documentary done about them. But so many people that I talk to, especially in Anonymous and just in the movement in general, you say Keith McHenry and they don't even know who you're talking about. And that just really chaps my ass that the founder of a global movement, Food Not Bombs, who started the entire movement with a piece of cardboard that he wrote "Food Not Bombs" with magic marker on, and then tied it with fucking string to a grocery cart with a 5-gallon bucket of soup in it, and that was Food Not Bombs. That's how the entire movement started. Him pushing that cart through fucking Golden Gate Park, and now there's like a Food Not Bombs
Ooh,
Tel
wait,
Aviv. There's a Food Not Bombs
wait.
Gaza. There's a Food Not Bombs Tel Aviv. I mean, there's literally Food Not Bombs in every city in the world now, and it all started from that wonderful man pushing a single grocery cart with a handmade sign that said "Food Not
He
Bombs."
started it in Boston in '84.
Okay, pushing it through the park
He
in
told the
Boston.
story a couple he told the story a couple of times. It was performance art originally. They wanted to make it look like Reagan had just gotten back in office and already there were soup lines in America. And so they had they staged a soup kitchen. They went and found like a couple of dozen homeless people, and they were like, "Holy shit, this actually needs to happen."
Yeah,
And that's how it happened. And when he got out to San Francisco about 5 years later, he did the shopping cart thing, and it went from that to like 900 days
Right
of
across
arrest
from
for
McDonald's,
feeding
right
the
across from
homeless.
McDonald's. He would go right to the end of the Golden Gate Park where Haight Street begins, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a McDonald's there. And he would
Yep.
literally set, and it would be the McDonald's that called the cops. It's actually, people don't know this, but the ones who started the Great Soup Wars in San Francisco in the 80s were McDonald's. They kept calling the cops on Keith because they felt like he was
Well, and
somehow,
the Vaughn's that's right there too, that supermarket that's right across the street. Because
which is now Whole Foods, by the
which
way.
is a fucking Whole Foods now. But yeah, it was Vaughn's back in the day. I fucking ugh. Little
And
assholes too.
the one thing I do remember is I didn't get arrested a lot with Keith. I wasn't really part of his movement. I was just there helping out whenever I happened to be in town. I was a deadhead. It wasn't anything serious with me, so I don't want people to think that I was, some big part of the beginning of Food Not Bombs. But I did get arrested with them guys. I mentioned Paul, of course, that he got arrested a lot. And the one thing that I do remember, guys, is the torture by the San Francisco Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
They would put us in these cages in a garage that were made out of chain link, just exactly like they did to Chelsea Manning. These things are essentially dog cages. In fact, I wouldn't even put my dogs. I got dogs, and I wouldn't put them into one of these cages. But they put us in them as a way to try to break us and stop us from, and everything was about that. Like, you went in and they would say, well, we're going to send you to jail for 30 years for feeding people in the park, but if you plead guilty and promise never ever to do that again, we'll just drop it all right now. And everything was geared towards simply getting Keith and anyone who would stand with him to stop. They just wanted them to stop. And it was just so funny. It was like, oh, all over fucking vegan soup that really wasn't that great. It
It
wasn't that
really
good
isn't.
of soup. It wasn't that good of soup, man. I'm sorry, but we
I mean,
already
it's
talked about it.
vegan. It's vegan. You're already starting at a disadvantage with that, so
Well, me and Steve sort of talked about it. I hope that Keith, after all these years, has a good humor about it. But there was actually a civil war within the budding ranks of Food Not Bombs in those early days, at least the San Francisco branch of it, because we had a fellow, and I don't know how, but I managed to remember his name correctly after all these years. But Big Paul. And I remember actually helping him one day go to a Vaughn's and go into the dumpster, and we recovered 140 chicken breasts. And we immediately, and by immediately, I mean within 15 minutes, we were lighting the logs on fire in these big barbecue pits that they had in Golden Gate Park. Back then, it was a different world. Yuppies and stuff could still go camping legitimately in Golden Gate Park, and they couldn't stop the homeless people from using those same facilities. So we went and found a big giant barbecue pit all set up, and he just literally started cooking chicken right on the spot and handing it out. And Keith was fucking livid. You know what I mean? And partly because Paul was also, he was using the term "food not bombs." It wasn't necessarily thought of back then, or even really now, as being like owned by Keith or anything like that. It was all kind of, and so Keith was, yeah, very livid. But when we served the chicken, but I loved Paul because I was a meat eater, and so he would keep me alive. You know what I mean? He would be the one to always be out there in Golden Gate serving the chickens and the meat. But those were heady days. The '80s were funny protest days. We had the anti-apartheid movement going back then, which is so parallel to, not in its exactitude, but in so many ways parallel to the Black Lives Matter movement. And not because it's dealing with black people either. That's not my point. It's just that there were a lot of parallels to that struggle. And everything was so old school. We had no communications gear. I mean, we actually, my group, my little group that I traveled with at the time, got famous for inventing a backpack FM radio station. So this was a backpack. It weighed about 45 pounds. It was decently heavy. And but it had a big antenna that came out of the top of it, and you just basically put a microphone clipped to your lapel or clipped to your shoulder, and you ran around, and you could broadcast on any FM frequency. And what we would do is we would pass that out when we did the protest flyers and stuff in tiny, tiny, almost unreadable little print at the bottom, we would put, pirate station and whatever frequency we had chosen to use in that city or for that place, and we would run around. One guy's job was to not get caught. His job was to not get arrested and simply run around the protest with that backpack on his back, and everybody would have their transistor radios, these goofy, they called them that, transistor radios, these little handheld like FM radios, that were still like, that was the way people communicated back then. And so we would do that and became quite famous for it. Really, we started a lot of, we really inspired a lot that came after that, a lot of pirate radio stuff and just things in general. But that's how primitive things were back then, that's what you had to do to get the same sort of effect that you get now with just somebody sending out a text message. Hey, everybody, the cops are on 4th Street. You can now do that in 5 seconds, as quick as you can type it in your phone, and you can let 10,000 people know that the cops are on 4th Street, right? But back then, you really actually had to have a dude running around talking about it on a radio station, in order to get that message, that same information to those same people who needed it. Very primitive times, and I think we've really reached a point now where people are so empowered that I think they take it for granted. I think people are very frustrated, especially young people nowadays, at the pace of protest and at the pace of change. And I would encourage them to just not be. The key thing is perseverance, and I promise you, I've always guaranteed young people this from the bottom of my heart. I swear to you that if you have the perseverance and you keep going, when you're my age, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh my God, so much has changed. We really did have this gigantic impact. We changed the world, and you will feel that way. It just, you've got to be willing to live it, to do it, and persevere. And then society is like an oil tanker at sea. It takes an oil tanker 200 miles to make a left turn. That's how slow an oil tanker moves. Well, society is also very heavy, very inertia bound, and so you have to persevere for a very long time, and you have to work very hard. But it will turn. It will eventually turn, and you will see that change. And now we're seeing it, I think, at an accelerated pace that we never even dreamed of back then when I was running around with that backpack on my back. Now that I can put 10,000 people in the streets of any city with a single fucking tweet on my Twitter account. I mean, it's just crazy, the power, the empowerment that we have as individuals and as activists. So that's a message that I think is going to be, now that I'm making my comeback. I've had a lot of changes. I went through a lot during that period of time. I actually thought for a while I was gonna pass from this mortal coil. I genuinely thought that I was dying. And facing these kinds of things and these kinds of challenges on a personal level, they make you reflect, and they change a man. That is, at least if you're willing to allow the universe to change you. And so I've come out a changed man, and a lot of priorities that I'm going to have now are going to be trying to get these messages across to people. Don't give up. Whatever you do, don't be disheartened by how bad it looks, man. It looked that bad back then. Trust me, it looked horrible back during the 80s. You had President Reagan getting on television, literally advocating for the de Klerk regime, literally advocating for a system of government where you went into a police station and you put your hand up to a color chart, and based on that color of the chart of your skin, that's how many rights you got. That's literally how society was run, and you had the president of the United States literally backing that shit, openly backing that shit. So, if you think this world is horrible, it was so much more horrible back then. We hadn't back when I started, we didn't have ACT UP even yet. We didn't even have, you couldn't even talk about being gay. Oh my God, if you did, you were doomed, and you were doomed from lefties. Everybody was a fucking cunt back then. Everybody was not politically right back then. I mean, it was horrible for gay people. It was horrible for LGBT people back then, and now it's still horrible, but it's a lot less horrible. Let's just put it that way. The only thing that I will say, and in all fairness, of 50 years of protest experience, um, things have gotten worse for Black people. I really feel that. And some Black people even really say that that's not true. They really disagree with me on it. But from my perspective, it's gotten a lot worse. I mean, they may have gotten away with shooting Black people back then in the streets, but they had to work at it, and they didn't do it very often. They weren't anxious to do it. It seems to me that these white cops now are actually getting pumped to go out and kill people. It really seems like it's become like a thing. like a war between police and an ethnic group in the United States, and we just didn't see that. I didn't see that when I was a kid growing up. So I really
I
feel like
mean,
it's
that's
got
definitely the mindset that they've taken at protests because at least I go to a protest nowadays and it's like a whole line of cops whipping out their batons first thing, like, gotta
well.
beat up some protesters.
Here's
That's
what
the whole vibe from them.
Glory. Here's what's interesting. Here's what's different about that than back then. Back then there was honor between us and the cops. And they would come in and they would actually talk to whoever was the guy with the bullhorn or whoever was guy that looked like he might be or gal that might be the leader, right? And they would tell you, okay, look, man, you're going to protest until 8 o'clock at night. You can do anything. You can throw water bottles at us. You can fucking climb the trees. We don't care. But when we give that dispersal order at 8, the sticks and the guns come out, and that's fucking it. And they would allow you. It was understood. It was part of a sort of a social contract that at least during daylight hours and for a certain amount of time, they're going to act civilized and behave themselves and let you get your message out. Nowadays, it's astonishing. If I were to announce, if I were say I were in the USA right now, and I were to announce, "Hey guys, I'm going into Boston Commons or I'm going into Golden Gate Park, and I'm starting to fucking Occupy again. I've had enough. Occupy needs to be revived. I'm starting Occupy Golden Gate. Everybody join me." They would. They would. I have Twitter, right? So they would, right? But the cops would be waiting there with the sticks and the guns out before we even got there to set the tents up. That's what's different. There is not even a microcosm, not even a pretend that we're going to respect your rights for a minute kind of thing. Now, that's gone. It's now just straight to the minute we see you in the street with a protest sign, we're going to shoot you with a rubber bullet, gas you, and arrest you. And it's like zero tolerance, just beyond zero tolerance. It's just like insane. So, at least back then, there was a social contract that said that, they would allow a little bit of every protest, no matter how much they hated it. And then they would decide arbitrarily, and then it became the sheeps and the goats, right? The sheeps went home, and the goats got out their bandanas and their Molotov cocktails, and then it became a different kind of party, right? I mean, it's the street battle was staged though, and it was timed. We knew it was coming, but we knew that we would have a certain amount of time with which to get our voice out. And nowadays it seems that the only people who get to do that freely are no offense, but it's white folk. I mean, look at January 6th. I mean, I couldn't believe the way the cops tolerated that. They just completely backed up. They were opening the doors for people. It's ridiculous. So again, it just shows the white privilege. If you're a pure white folk out there just doing something that the cops like, they'll tolerate it. But if you're out there with any kind of cause that it goes against the establishment, then you get shut down. But the zero tolerance now has reached and that's part of what my case is all about. As far as I'm concerned, my case is the virtual equivalent of that. It's them coming after me with millions of dollars to manhunt me, millions of dollars to prosecute me for a 30-minute sit-in at the county courthouse. That's what it amounted to. We took the front page of the county website down for 30 minutes. We even told them when we were going to do it and exactly how long we would do it for. We were as polite about it as you could possibly be to make our point. And now I think I'm currently up to about 72 months. That's Stanley Cohen, who's a very famous activist attorney, once spent a couple of weeks breaking my case apart to give me an estimate of the best he could ever possibly get from me with all of his connections, and they're considerable. And he came back with, even after talking with some U.S. prosecutors, and he came back and said the least you're ever going to do if you come home is 72 months. Add that up, guys. That's a lot of years in prison. That's a lot of fucking years in prison. You know what I mean? For standing up to the man in little old Santa Cruz County. So, for a bunch of homeless people.
For math. 72 months for math.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I said,
I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
the way I see it, DDoS is different than a sit-in. In fact, I don't even equate it to a sit-in. I actually, when I get down to really arguing the nits and picks of this sort of argument, I actually disagree with the fact that it's equated to a sit-in. That's a common thing that Bela Coleman started, and it started in Germany when the German government actually found that it was a case of a virtual sit-in. But I disagree with this, because if you really break down the physical analogy, what it's really like is if I went down to the county courthouse and where there's a sign in front that says this is the county courthouse, and I put a blanket over the top of it.
Yeah.
That's really what it's like, because nobody was denied access to the rest of the site. So you can't equate it to a sit-in, because if a sit-in would have blocked access to the building, the entire county government function, right, to people. But we didn't do that. You could get to your taxes, you could get to everything. The only thing that was missing was the front page. It was strictly a symbolic takedown. And so it's what I did was much more, and what many of us did back then was much more equivalent to simply throwing a blanket over the sign that's out front of the county courthouse, rather than the common analogy that's used, which is locking it down, a bit more of a messy and disruptive process. And to just because it happens across the wires, just because it happens across the internet, it becomes this big terrifying thing. Like, oh my God, these people are disrupting the world. They have the power of God. It was so easy, guys. I literally handed out pieces of software to people in Santa Cruz. Like I was handing out CDs. I was like, guys, just fire this software up on such and such a day and just hit the button go. It's already pre-programmed for the county website. We're all going to take it down. I was literally just handing the software out. Legal software to possess, no, by the way. There's no...
Yeah, I just stressed that
thing.
software, right? I mean...
Yeah, there's no such thing as illegal software anyway, except they've tried to make malware illegal, but even that has failed in court arguments. There are actually legitimate cases even for malware, such as research and stuff like that. So, it's really, it's been made so much more of than it really was at the time. It's gone to a ridiculous proportion, and the whole basis of my case is that this zero tolerance of any dissent online is as bad as the zero tolerance of any dissent in the streets. We can't allow this to happen, and even more so online, and I'll explain why. It's more important to defend our right to protest online than it is in the streets, and I'll tell you why that is, guys. Because in real life, there is something that it's even a legal concept, but it's also a real place that you can go to right now, in common law, in accepted Western law, called the public commons. Okay, and this is where we tend to protest, right? The streets, the sidewalks, the parks, right? Those are known as public commons. There is a whole sort of long-standing legal precedents and legal debates surrounding around the use of the public commons. Well, the problem with the internet is there is no such thing. There are no public commons. Every single of the internet is owned by companies and corporations and whatever. All you can do is you can build the public commons on top of their private platform, but you still don't really have a public commons. There is no place where we all have a right to gather on the internet that nobody can gainsay us. Nobody can unplug us. Nobody can ban us. There is no such thing. And so without that concept, without that very important integral component of a public commons, protest becomes exponentially more difficult. I mean, ipso facto, by logic, means that you are going to have to take somebody else's commons and protest on their fucking lots. You're going to have to protest on somebody else's property, so to speak. There is no other alternative, since all property on the internet is private property. So you're left with nothing else but things like DDoS and defacing and stuff like that as a means of protest because of that situation. How tilted the balance of power is in that arena. So we need to defend that right to be able to be disruptive and to be able to gather and do things and get our messages across, even if it's in a transgressive and disruptive way, as a form of protest, because this has become as powerful now as street protests. It's equal to it, and it's essential. They're both essential to each other now, become ambiguously linked. And so we need to preserve that. And I feel like what I did by coming to Mexico, even though the case is only 72 months, even though I could have pled guilty, maybe got left, the idea was to make a point that this is not acceptable, ever. It's not acceptable to send dozens of FBI agents to your house for holding up a cardboard sign in the streets. It's not acceptable for them to send dozens of FBI agents to my house for holding up a cardboard sign on the internet, which is what I did. So in order to make that point, I went to the great extreme of first going to Canada and then eventually coming to Mexico. And to people who see my story on the movie, they'll critique it and they'll go, "This guy went too far. He didn't, that's stupid. Why did he do it over something so stupid?" And I did it because it was the point that mattered. It was the point that we had to stand for our right to be unmolested and be able to protest even disruptively on the internet. And I think that message has gotten across. I mean, I've given about 400 interviews since I've been on the run from the FBI. Not too many fugitives in the history of law enforcement have ever done something like what I've done. I mean, it's really kind of, in a way, sort of historical in the sense that I've been so transparent and so open about this run from the FBI and while I was doing it. I think that's really unique in the history of law enforcement because I don't, even Kevin Mitnick, who's probably the second most famous hacker for being a fugitive, um, really did it in a very secretive way. I mean, he went underground. He disappeared. Um, Very few messages from Kevin during those years he was underground. I was tweeting every single day, hundreds of tweets a day sometimes,
Yeah.
while literally running from coffee house to coffee house from like 8 different, national and international law enforcement agencies, so intelligence agencies, all of it.
Yeah, you
And
always made sure people knew you were there still. That's just true. That people
that was
could.
part of the point. That was part
Yeah.
of the point, was to not hide. I'm not a criminal, and that I felt like any other approach would be granting them their argument that what I had done was somehow criminal and deserved all this. And so it was important to me to stay as open, and I took huge risks. And to be honest with you, a lot of people got into trouble. Uh, Famous people, Beulah Coleman is one of them. They actually went to her and they said, "Look, we know that Commander X is here, and we're going to get him. And you want to pass that message to him? We're coming for him." And that's hard. She's just a professor. She's just she's nobody. She's not even part of the movement. She's an activist by admission, by public admission, but she's just really a little professor lady from fucking McGill University. I mean, come on, who studies hackers. I mean, she didn't deserve that kind of jackbooted treatment. And now she's literally been put on the same list, Yellow Coleman has, as that famous Petraeus, the famous movie producer who got put on for doing the Iraq movie. That lady, who now she's they call it the 4 Qs. So whenever they search your name to go in or out of the U.S., you come up with 4 Qs in the bottom of your readout and it will even be on your plane ticket. And then they know that that's the people we take to the office, and we copy their hard drives, and we take their phones, and it's automatic. It happens every single time. We don't even need a reason. You're just on the QQQQQ list or whatever. So, she put up with a lot because of her association with me, and a lot of other people put their necks on the line to associate with me during those sort of heady years of my run from everything. And a lot of people, got hurt. I mean, the FBI is my family. We won't even talk about, because everybody knows that's a rule. We don't talk about my family at all. But even my family paid, and all of my friends, all of my close associates that they could get their hands on physically, paid a dire price. Wherefore are they any different? We hear about people in Myanmar getting rounded up because their cousin was protesting, right? How can the United States claim to be any better than that junta when they're out fucking knocking on my friends' doors because of what I did? Friends that they know had nothing to do with it. Friends that they know didn't even know what I was doing. My family didn't even know what I was doing. Those people back in New England where I grew up didn't even know what the fuck I was or what I was doing. They had that little to do with it. But you're going to go knock on their door. You're going to stay parked for days in front of their houses and intimidate them and do that jackbooted shit. That's fucking Myanmar junta shit. How is it any different other than maybe you might end up dead? I mean, they haven't quite come to that yet, sending people home dead in boxes from associating with me. But, I mean, how is it any different if you're going to randomly target? What happened to the Constitution not having guilt by association? You know what I mean? You're supposed to even be able to associate with me and not be guilty, much less associate with me and not even know what the fuck I'm doing, right? I mean, and so I think that the FBI has really gone off the deep end with chasing, especially the cyber activists. It seems like we really have their ire. They're really terrified of us more than anybody. It really likens, and I say this in the movie, I make a lot of comparisons because Steve will get a kick out of this, but he's well aware of this, and I think he's also, at least to a certain extent, well aware of my history. But I've been very unashamed about it in my books, and much more so in the movie, my association with ELF and ALF. And people have often asked me, well, God, dude, man, running around setting shit on fire? I mean, that's kind of crazy. Well, first of all, as many people, and especially some of the leaders of that movement have pointed out, not one single living creature ever died in any of those fires. And we went to great extent and great risk of our own part to make sure of that. Second of all, it was shock and awe. It was theater. It's a lot like what Steve said with what Keith was doing, only just a little bit more dramatic. It's kind of taking it to the next level. But it was great theater, and the way that people took it so seriously, like we had lit a nuke off or something, just it made it all the more. We were getting that message out. You know what I mean? And so I really see Anonymous's history as doing that same thing, but without the messy fire part, right? And we don't have to clear buildings ahead of time. We can just raid your server, burn it, and it's amazing to me. But it has the same effect on people. They're completely freaked out, like, oh my God, the fucking sky is falling. And so we get the same effect, like I said, without the danger to ourselves and to others, and without the messiness and all of that shit. But their sentences are about the same. I mean, they sent the one leader of ELF. They sent him. He was from Santa Cruz, and they sent him to prison for about 12 years. And that's about what a lot of cyber activists are facing. Jeremy Hammond did 10 flat. He did a decade flat in prison. So we're in the same range of what they were willing to give out to people that, again, they considered the most. ALF and ELF, I'm sorry, at the time of its height of its activity when I was involved with it, was actually the President of the United States went on television and said it was the most dangerous domestic terrorist organization in the United States, which was laughable to us because we didn't have any guns, we didn't have any, we were just going around burning empty fucking buildings for the fun of it, and you know, kind of no different than having a big bonfire, really. A lot of these places were in the middle of nowhere. So, you know, it just, to us, it seemed like so little, but to the world, it seemed like this huge big deal. And I think Anonymous recaptured that, and that was, for me, a huge selling point, a huge a road into hacktivism for me, was that idea that I could achieve that same shock and awe, but without the messiness and the danger, which is always helpful, always a good thing. So.
X, when we were chatting earlier this afternoon, just bullshitting and catching up, we were kind of drawing some parallels between what's going on in Gaza now and what you guys were up to a decade ago, and there's some deficiencies this time around, and I was wondering.
Well, we need more people. We need more hackers. First of all, you know, I encourage people to read Dark Ops, not because I need the money. And I guarantee you, if you tweet at me, and Steve will back me, and Mark will back me on this, if you tweet at me and need a copy and you can't afford the $2 I'm charging, I'll send you one right live on Twitter. I'll make sure you get hooked up.
Actually, did the same to me too. So yeah.
Nobody has ever been denied to read my books. So first of all, if you're listening to this broadcast and you really want to read these books,
that's true. I read it for free.
There are a lot of people who
guilty.
don't have $2. I'm not even making fun of you for not having $2.
I'll sell it to you for $1.
There you go. Hawk them after you get them. You know,
undercut this motherfucker.
Make enough money to eat. If you can make money to buy a meal for yourself off pirating my book, you have my complete sanction. But anyway, read the book. It's got a very thorough review of Operation Israel in it. First of all, it was amazing for a lot of reasons. It was amazing because it began, as so many of these ops begin, with a wonderful butterfly moment of a 15-year-old Palestinian kid coming into a anonymous IRC chat full of OGs who just by the sheer coincidence happened to be sitting around that night with nothing to do, and we were telling war stories about the Arab Spring. Because we thought like we were OGs and the Arab Spring had been a whole 3 years ago. It was like ancient history, right? In Anonymous by then. Everything was moving so fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're literally like being assholes and just bragging about shit that like literally wasn't even, the dust hadn't even settled on. as if we were heroes, and that was partly because We Are Legion made us feel that way. It had just come out at the time. This 15-year-old Palestinian kid who had been sent to us, somebody told him, "Hey, I suggest you go ask them for help, and here's the IRC." And he popped into the channel, and he was just like, "Hey, is this anonymous?" And we're like laughing at him like usual, like, "Well, no, it might be, but you can go over to 4chan." And we're all just trolling him and everything, and giving him fucking a hard time, right? And he's like, "Well, I was told to come here and ask for help. I'm in Gaza." And now all of a sudden you can kind of hear a pin drop in the IRC, right? Because they're like, "Yeah, really?" And they're like, he's like, "Yeah," and they're planning on turning the internet off in Gaza, and they just dropped leaflets detailing how they're going to turn our internet off and bomb us. And one guy asked a question. I remember clearly one cat asking, "You mean they literally said on the flyer they're going to turn the internet off?" And he's like, he's not even talking about the bombing, which was typical of Anonymous. I often gave interviews and told people, Anonymous will ignore, 100 atrocities all around the world, but if you dare to fucking take down a meme or turn off the internet, we'll be like, the hive will be enraged, right? So we're a funny group of people. What our priorities are, we're ignoring the bombing part, and we're just focusing on. And so somebody said Pixar, it didn't happen. That was inevitable, right? And the kid had already done it. He'd already taken the effort to load a picture up. He knew he was probably going to be asked. And within seconds, he tweeted a picture. It was a yellow flyer with black printing on it, and sure enough, it said right on it they were coming, and they were going to turn the internet off. And that was all it took. Within an hour, there was a website, there was a Twitter page, there was a press release, and I was already giving interviews back then to the media because we were still the hot clickbait amongst mainstream media at the time. So literally literally within 5 minutes of the press release going out on the mailing list that we had of reporters, I was already giving interviews about Op Israel and being bombastic and threatening that we were going to go take down the entire Israeli cyberspace. Well, little did I know that 70,000 or so hackers would flock around the world, would flock to our banner within about a week. Within the first 4 days after that, did $1 billion US dollars worth of damage to the Israeli cyberspace. Yeah, it was hard to stop it actually, and that was a whole other drama in the book, where we had to put the genie back in the bottle. Something we've never done before or after is to actually try to order people to stop, and we had to because the Palestinians had signed a peace deal in Egypt, and part of that peace deal was them coming to us and asking us to stand down. So I ended up in the completely unique historically position of having to literally demand that Anonymous stand down because we have a deal. And we're part of that deal, and I'm tired of seeing people die. So I don't care whether you agree with it or not, it's going to stop the bombs. So we're going to stop the cyber attacks, they stop the bombs, and everybody goes home for a while. And that's how it ended. That's how Op Israel ended. There are some deficiencies in this one, only in the sense that two complaints that I have with the current operation. One, we need more people, especially on the hacking front. Don't be scared. Protect yourself, do the right thing. But if you've got the skills and you've got the moxie, we need more people to step up to that. It is a technically challenging and also somewhat dangerous part of what needs to be done, and so people who have it in them to do that need to do that. People should be aware that there's danger and not do it if they feel like that's a thing. But we need more people in the op. I think we got about 10,000 hackers now, and that's just a guesstimate based on what I'm seeing, the number of sites that are coming down, and that's a pretty large number. From what we've seen in the last few years, but compared to what it would take to stop the Israeli army. And that's the moral of the story, guys. The moral of the story is Anonymous made history with that original op. It was the first time in human history that anybody has ever used pure information. Nothing but ones and zeros. No guns, no nothing. Nothing but keyboards, guys. And we were able to stop a determined kinetic army. And they stopped because of the damage, the money that was the dollar damage. Israel, more than any country in the West, is super dependent on their cyberspace. That has to do with their size, the size of their economy, but also the size of their geography. It's just the nature of the way Israel is set up that they are super dependent on everything cyber. And damaging that is a super powerful way to get them to stop doing something. So I would encourage the current Op Israel people, get more people on board, keep pressing, and know that what you're doing makes a difference. You can get them to stop if you can just get that dollar damage up there high enough. That's really what it's all about. But they will stop. They actually care about only one thing more than killing Palestinians, and that's money. And so hit them in the wallet, and you will stop that bombing of Gaza. This time, the same way we did it before, and it will always work, because they will forever be dependent upon that, and you will always be able to punch them in the balls and cyber wise. So
I mean, I'm with you. I'm hoping that happens again because there's only so much that Palestinians can do to resist, and they really are putting up an admirable fight right now. But you said they just need more.
well,
Oh.
I know that we all can. I can be honest. I'm not going to say we. I can be honest and admit that those rockets make me happy. Um, and the guys that are
Oh,
out there,
me too.
the guys that are running out there into the cornfields to light those things off are taking a huge risk, right? Because they can easily and quickly be targeted by very high tech munitions. And if they don't get out of that wheat field fast enough, they're going to end up dead. And I'm sure a number of rocket launchers are already amongst the dead. But here's the thing that I want people to remember, because I know these people personally. I have had deep personal relationships with them, and America owes them a great debt, and that's the Palestinian hackers. And I would encourage everybody to keep them in your thoughts and minds, because they will target their apartment building and kill everybody in it if they get that IP to that apartment building and find out. They will. They will. And a lot of these mysterious ones, the ones that you see on the news where it's like, oh my God, no warning, no nothing, and they just targeted this apartment building. Are they crazy? I will bet you dollars to donuts over half of those. Over half of them, guys, because hacking is very popular in the Gaza Strip. Over half of them are hackers that got in and were in, and they literally killed them while they were actively hacking Israeli cyberspace. And that's how brave these guys are, because they know that can happen. They know that the minute they log in to do what you and I, as a non-smart, take for granted, DDoS something or deface something or anything like that, they know the minute they fucking connect to the internet, that missile could literally come through their fucking bedroom window any second now. And that's guts beyond guts. We face arrest in the West, exile in my case, that kind of thing. But imagine, having to worry about the minute you fucking log in to your VPN and start your work, that the missile could be coming through the window. And it was really Obama who opened the ethical window to Israel and to other countries to do that. Obama came into office and said that he would be open-minded to missiling a hacker, to actually like using kinetic force against hackers. Hillary Clinton called for the missiling of Julian Assange, and then sure enough, a hacker that Mark knows, and I know, we both knew him personally. He was originally part of Anonymous. He made the big mistake of becoming a hacker for ISIS, and I'll grant you that wasn't the greatest career move in the world, but they sure enough, they missiled him in an alleyway in Damascus, Syria. Um, yeah. So for nothing else, he wasn't even carrying a gun for ISIS, and in fact,
Hmm.
ISIS kind of thought he was a joke. You know what I mean? They really didn't even take him seriously. So
Yeah, because when
you
they
know,
went there, they went there to just fight with the rebels for freedom, and then gradually became like part of ISIS things. And like you're saying, the ISIS itself probably didn't take them even that seriously, right?
no, they didn't. Nobody did, and it's funny because they really sucked him in. They offered him a big fancy title in the ISIS nation or whatever, right? And they didn't have any intention of respecting that, or actually, like having him be like a minister of internet information or whatever it is they made him. They only needed a couple of things done that they weren't able to figure out, and stuff that any of us could have gone over there and hooked up for them. And because he was literally the only one over there volunteering to do that sort of stuff, He and like I said, they stroked his ego with like, hey, we're gonna make you a big important member of this group, and he was young and stupid, and I wish that I could have talked to him before that happened, because he was a very promising young man. He was a very incredible guy. I make no bones about the fact that we were close friends. I still don't dislike him at all. I mean, I don't have any. He made one bad career choice that I strongly disagree with, but other than that, he, you know, uh, Team Poison, dude. Team Poison was rocking it, and nobody ever wants to admit that. But for a good stretch of like a year or two, the entire non collective was leaning on Team Poison, especially after some of the big hackers started to go down from the arrests and stuff. Team Poison really stepped up to that technological gap, and they were doing hacks for every kind of anonymous op that there was, not just Palestinian stuff. They were a real powerhouse and real engine of change, and nobody can deny that. They can, they do now, because it's tainted supposedly by, by one of them ended up leaving and going to join ISIS. But I don't know. I'm again another controversial stand, because now I'm supposedly I support terrorism, according to a lot of my detractors who. I support everything bad, Trump, terrorism, you name it, and people just don't get what's really there, what's really behind that. It's people.
Oh, they had a legitimate hate against the American Israeli oppression in the region. They were oppressing people who are not able to defend themselves against armies like that, and yeah, then it is possible you end up with like a more like, I don't want to say hardcore, like a die-hard group like ISIS that is actively fighting against these people, but having their own wrong motivations, right? In that sense. But
But that's all the more reason. That's all the more reason why we need to help and push forward and raise up, and not put roadblocks in the way of groups like, say, Anonymous Egypt or the Syrian Cyber Army, or those kind of groups. We need to not detract from them. We need to not call them, well, they're not anonymous. We need to support that, because it can show the young people there that they can be extremely disruptive, extremely effective, without having to go through all the beheadings and the stupidity and the bombs and the guns. That there is another way, and that if applied correctly and with courage, and danger, no small amount of danger to it, but there is danger in planting a landmine too, or danger in firing an RPG at a tank, right? So there's all kind of dangers, right? But it's dangerous, but I think it's a better approach, and I think we should encourage, especially Middle Eastern young hacktivists, to continue with that and be as disruptive as possible, get as many followers to them as possible, because it shows that there is another way. You don't have to follow these extremist religious dudes. You can instead, take a more secular approach and a less kinetic approach to this, and you'll come out just as much ahead as you would any other way, maybe more in the end. And so I think these groups need to be supported, and that's why I supported, and I forget his name, Mark, help me out, man. I'm having some problems with my memory lately, but the guy that we're actually talking about.
you mean Trick, right?
Yeah, Trick. So dudes like Trick, that's why I supported him, because it looked like that's the direction he was going. When he started to make his slant, and especially when he actually moved to the Middle East, I really felt like that's where Trick was going to do. He's going to go over there and get them guys some skills and give them an alternative to ISIS. And instead, he ended up getting sort of brainwashed into them. And so it was, again, it was a bad career choice, but I still feel that Trick in the beginning anyway, he had the right idea, and he had the heart and all of it of a revolutionary. He just made that one misstep that cost him. But it was Obama who promised that. The key point to remember is Obama promised to do that, and he fulfilled that promise. He started missiling hackers. So, when you get to that point, it's really kind of a war. What do you expect? What do you expect except pipeline shutdowns and electrical grid shutdowns? For years they claimed, Mark, that we were horrible people, and we were going to turn the electrical grid off. At this point, they're killing so many people, we might have to, Mark. We might have to do some fucking horrible fucking shit like that. You know what I mean? Just to really get people to stop and think about what they're doing and think about what's happening to the planet. And when you wage war, you get the spoils of war. They started this. They started the war. We were protesters when we started out, and it was all good. And then they made it into a war, and now you've got some of the smartest people on Earth who know everything about the one thing that runs the entire planet, which is this digital network that everything is dependent upon, but nobody knows how it works except them, except these hackers, right? And you've literally pissed them off to the point where it's just they're just like rabid dogs. They're like a pack of rabid dogs, And I think that this was unnecessary. This sort of escalation between the hackers and because we aren't the bad guys. The bad guys are going to be the ones that start opening dams. The bad guys are going to be the ones that make pipelines explode, not the ones that wipe out their billing records so that nobody has to pay any gas bills next month. That sounds to me like a Robin Hood hack, to be honest with you. It doesn't sound like somebody who's out there, but one day the crazy guy is going to come along who wants to blow up a pipeline, and you're going to look for help. You're going to look around you for hackers to help you figure out where this guy is and how to catch him, and none of us are going to help you. We're all going to sit back and let it happen because you've disenfranchised or imprisoned us all. You know what I mean? There's nobody left to come to the rescue, like in the movie Black Hat, where they go into the prison, right? And they get Hathaway, the Black Hat hacker. They get him to convince him to come out and help them catch the bad guy who wants to start blowing up nuclear power plants. So and he says yes, but guess what? This time people are going to say no. You know what I mean? If they came to me and said help us, I would say no. You're on your own, man. You ran me out of my own country. You figure it out. Find somebody else. So they really left themselves vulnerable, the West has, in a position to wage this war against Anonymous, to wage this war against hackers. It was the dumbest move anybody has ever made in the history of civilization. And I think it's going to be a civilization turning moment. It's going to be a pivotal moment because this is where the hackers are going to say, okay, you know what, we're just going to bring it all down. We're just going to wreck it all, and we'll rebuild it. We'll rebuild something new, and it may not be better, but it'll be different. And so you've really reached that sort of nihilistic, anarchist point by taking it as far as what we see in Colombia and Myanmar. We were talking about it, Steve, me, and Glory before the show. They're just going to start killing us everywhere. They're going to start doing it everywhere. I mean, America, Canada, it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter. Myanmar, they're just going to start shooting protesters, and this is the sign of things to come. And so at that point, you really have to step up your game. You're going to have to get transgressive, you're going to have to get disruptive, and you're going to have to find those things that can trump kinetic force. Information warfare is one of those few things that can actually stop an army or stop kinetic force. It takes time and it takes work, but it can be done.
Yeah, well, when you talk about Gaza, you have like one of the most advanced armies in the world attacking young people who can't defend themselves. They can't like fight back with throwing stones and stuff. That's just impossible. But when they get like behind a computer, they suddenly realize they do have some power to fight back, right, and to defend themselves.
In the last like 2 hours, Gaza has been subjected to a fresh round of brutal fucking attacks. Like it's the last 4 or 5 days were a prelude to what is currently happening right now.
Well, okay, so let's run over this again then, because it does seem important, and I do have some tips. Okay, there has to be some Israel people out there listening. So let me tell you the things that we did that I'm not seeing, and it doesn't mean you're not out there doing them. Okay. And this is not a criticism, this is just some extra shit that we did that you guys don't seem to be doing. Number one, you've got to find somebody who has a connection, who can reach out to the Palestinian hackers. They can be of a huge benefit if you could just get them in your private Discord channel and talk to them. There are things that they are willing to do and capable of doing that worked really well during the last siege. One of them was rooftop webcam streams. And this became one of the most popular things. And like the women, the old women and the grandmas, they were the ones who would volunteer to sit with the cam and keep talking. on the camera so that the young people could go back to work. So that they would set these cams up on their roofs and you could just see the bombs falling continuously. And that's it. That's all the content was. But then it would be a lady or a lot of times an old woman or man sitting behind the camera and just describing what he's seeing in a very casual way, almost like he's talking to another friend sitting there having beer, which maybe that's what they were doing. But they would keep the sort of the verbal commentary going as best they could. Those rooftop cameras became incredibly famous. And we were really able to make hay with that. We were able to get the links to them into mainstream media even. And we were able to get, more importantly, hundreds of thousands of people to watch them. So that's one thing that would be a super powerful tool if somebody could arrange that. But it really takes a lot of this higher level hacktivism stuff takes doing the hard work that I see a lot of non-ops in the last few years not doing, and that is you've got to reach out and try to make connection with the people that you're flying cover for. Whether it be Egyptians, Tunisians, or Palestinians, they can be so helpful in arranging so many different kind of hacks.
Holy shit, you guys! I'm sorry, I got to cut in for this, man. Palestinians targeted a chemical weapons facility in Israel. That's a big old boom.
In Ashdod. I'm sorry, I butchered that pronunciation, but yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, those
Nice to
casts.
see that Iron Duns is doing well.
This is something that Beely talked about. I'm sorry, X. I did, but this is kind of important. But Beely mentioned on our good friend Vanessa Beely mentioned on our other good friend Gordon Dimmick's show yesterday that when the nuclear facility outside of Dimona got attacked, hit with a missile strike a couple of weeks ago, a month ago. It proved to the Israelis that the dome wasn't infallible. And so everybody in the region witnessed that too. And the last month has been spent looking for vulnerabilities to exploit in the Iron Dome. And they got a secret nuclear facility a month ago. They got a chemical weapons manufacturing plant just now. That is a very large explosion.
In Afghanistan, ISIS is one of the most unsophisticated armies literally in the world. And in Afghanistan, for 3 years, ISIS was able, their fighters in the field were able, they had a mobile app. They actually distributed it as a mobile app, and they could bust open their mobile phones, dudes, and no shit, tune into any fucking American drone that was overhead. Every single one of them were hacked and opened to them via an appy that they literally downloaded on an app. So they were literally for 3 years, Americans couldn't figure out how come the Taliban is doing so good. We're losing battle after battle. They were really falling back on their heels. The NATO forces were for 3 years, and the reason for that turned out to be that those drones were completely ineffective because the Taliban had managed to actually hack into them. There are so many crafty ways to fuck with a kinetic army. The biggest one is communications. Disrupt anything military that has to do with their communications. Telephones, email, even websites. All of it's important to them, and all of it helps the military move. So Anonymous is actually pretty savvy about that part of it, but I would encourage even more so, disrupt anything government, anything Israeli government, anything is to do with IDF communications can be incredibly disruptive. But again, also those rooftop camps, guys, if things like that can be done, and then just in general, the more that you can connect with the Palestinian people, and especially those hackers in Palestine, there are some really neat possibilities that open up that only hackers would think of by having those people, those boots on the ground, and they're willing to do dangerous stuff. They're already literally got their backs against the wall and a gun to their forehead, so they've got nothing to lose. So you can be very bold with them and come up with some incredible ideas. So there's a number of things. I really encourage Anons in general in all of these ops, Colombia, Myanmar, Israel, to don't forget your history, guys. Go back and look at what those before you did, because a lot of innovative stuff was done during the first 10 years of Anonymous that seems to have slipped away. Another big thing that you need to be prepared to do, and this is going to be hard, difficult, and possibly even mean raising money and stuff like that, but you need to come up with a good solid plan for the inevitability that they turn the internet off in Gaza and the West Bank. And you need to come up with solutions ahead of time for that. You need to be able to be proactive so that they can reconnect immediately. And that's going to take, again, reading the history and getting with the OGs who helped to turn the internet back on in places like Egypt, and finding out, reading about, and even asking them, how did you guys do that? How did you manage that? And that was the most difficult thing technologically that Anonymous ever faced. More than any hack, more than anything that we ever did technologically, the most difficult thing was learning how to thwart dictators and turn the internet back on again when they turned it off, and giving those people that access back. It's an incredibly powerful tool to them, but it's also an incredibly big slap in the face to the dictator when he throws the switch and the shit don't go off. They get really pissed when they can't actually turn the internet off, and when they can't shut those people down. So their rage will cause them to fall even faster. You know what I mean? They get so mad. In fact, the Mubarak, one of the last things he ever did was cut the internet in Egypt, and the first crime he was ever convicted of was cutting the internet in Egypt. For that, he received 5 years in prison. 5 years of Mubarak's sentence was simply for he sent a squad of troops down to the Mediterranean Ocean, and they dynamited the fiber optic cable where it comes up out of the ocean, where it comes out of the Mediterranean, and that's how he turned it off the final time. And for that crime, that was one of his last crimes in office, and it was the first crime he was ever convicted for. So that's key, pivotal to the power of Anonymous, is that ability, and you have that ability. All of you out there who are listening have that ability. This was not magic what we did. It's just about finding out all the people, all the different little tricks, and putting it all together into a plan and executing it. And it's not rocket science, and it can still be done. But this is something that I think is a big loss for Anonymous, because we used to say we would never let the internet be turned off, and right up until Syria, we stuck to that. And now we kind of sit back. I see Anonymous sitting back watching, countries all over Africa, South America, and everywhere, Israel, allowing them to turn the internet off, and there is zero response from Anonymous. This is not what Anonymous used to be about. Anonymous used to be about, fuck no, not on our watch. We'll turn it right back on again. And so you need to figure out how you can do that, and then you need to be bold enough and do the work to implement that. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. There's going to be some money involved, but you can make it happen. We did it, and we were just to read my books. I was a bum living out of a backpack in the coffee houses, and everybody else that you read about that with the OGs back then, we were all just normal fucking people, college students, grandmothers, you name it, just regular people who said, hey, I have this skill, I have that skill, and we put it all together, and then we fought the man with it. And so I think there's those two things: media savvy, getting those webcams going into Palestine, and then really going back to Anonymous's roots, and starting to figure out country by country how you can proactively deal with internet shutdowns. And the people will love you for it, and you will be powerful, and you will send a powerful message to the tyrants and the people who are protesting both. So those two things are my tips to the people out there in the ops. And so when you mentioned, Mark, that there was a little bit lacking, that's my thing. That's where I think that people could go and polish the game a little bit more, and then you'll stop them. They'll stop bombing Gaza if you do all that shit, guys. I promise you they will.
Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I saw Marianne Williamson saying some of the dumbest shit I've ever fucking seen in my entire goddamn life.
I don't know which one you're talking about.
Had to go ahead and take a shot at the old queen. There. Fucking
Yeah.
garbage ass.
Zionists really are some of the most fucking soft ass hoes ever, honestly.
It's like
I've seen Neymar take more convincing dives and
Yes.
Israelis. It's
Yeah, well, with issues
and,
like this, everyone suddenly has an opinion, right? But you have to realize this struggle is going on for a very long time, and now it's escalating again. And then, okay, well, it's going to be quiet again for a while, and then it's going to escalate again. But this is an ongoing struggle for so many years, and yeah,
Mhm.
and no one ever cares
I
except when
will
it's trending.
say, I will say, thanks to, obviously in part the work of Anonymous and helping to show this, but like just journalists on the ground constantly covering this, like the Zionist grasp over propaganda has slipped a lot because there are a lot more
Yeah,
people being like willing to call this out, and even people who like don't follow this conflict are able to see that what is going on to that what is happening to the Palestinians is wrong, and that they have a right to defend themselves, and you can gauge it from the response of the Zionists because I just got back to South Florida, and all of them are going, "Oh, you guys don't know anything. You're not tied to this conflict at all. You need to do your research and come back to me. Look at this IDF infographic." It's like, "Oh, you're panicking now. Okay, that's
This is where
good."
Anonymous really plays one of the most vital roles in all of this is because the mass media will be happy to ignore completely. MSM will be happy to ignore dead babies in the streets that have been phosphorus, any of that shit. People think that that's the shit that's going to get MS on board. I got news. MSN cares about only one thing, and that's clicks and fucking money. And so the hacking is what sells. People think the hacking is sexy. People will read a story about Israel getting hacked, and even if it's only one paragraph on the bottom of that story that says, "Oh, by the way, this is happening because of the Palestinian conflict and the bombing going on right now," that's all it takes. The connection is made, but it's the hacking that can actually put a gun to the head of MSM and forces them, because people love that shit. The average person loves to read about cyber shit nowadays. It's just become more and more and more intriguing. The more stuff and the more our world becomes affected by it, and people love it. And so give them what they love. Go in there and hack, and then send all the broken pieces to the mainstream media, and before long they'll be covering the story. They'll have no choice. It sucks them in through the one thing that they can't resist, which is something sexy like hacking. So it's really a great it's a great job I have. I mean, I think all of us that are hacktivists really kind of got to admit that we got the best job in the world, really.
ah, but you're right. It is like that. That's popular in the media now, the hacking stuff. So that works. Yeah.
It's
That is.
always worked. It's always worked. That's not even new. That's how we started. We started because they couldn't resist the fucking idea that you could magically reach out like a ghost in the wires and fucking wreck their shit. And that will always be mysterious as long as we live in a world that is code illiterate. It's why we need to teach our children code just the same way that in 1100 AD people desperately needed to teach their children to read, because nobody knew how to read except the princes and the fucking clerics, right?
Mhm.
So it's the same exact place in history when it comes to coding. And until that happens, and I want it to happen. I'm one of those people who advocates for it. I don't like being a god amongst, a one-eyed man amongst blind people, who is essentially God, right? If you're a one-eyed man in a world full of blind people, right? And so it's much better to have everybody literate in this, and then and that way, this is where we're in the period now where that's not true, and so every one of us who can do this shit, they make us into a rock star. Right, and that's not our fault. That's just the nature of the fact that there's so few people who can reach out that way and be disruptive that way, and so that's no good. I would prefer a demystification of hacking and code literacy be universal than to be in a world where a few of us make all the rules, because they're the bad guys are hacking too. The government's hacking. We're all hacking each other. It's one big mess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say.
No, but he's
to
right
that
though. He's
part,
right though. I mean,
except you're right.
in
Like
like
fucking Me and Steve are code illiterate as fuck.
Yeah, I know, but if the complete society becomes digitalized, yeah, then coding becomes necessary. But you have to learn to like maneuver in that, or at least understand coding, I guess. I mean,
Right. The same thing. It's the same thing as literacy. Back then, you had no idea what anything that was going on outside your village because you couldn't read. You know, your world was literally limited to your house and the people around you because you couldn't read, and the people who could read had this enormous power um, over the masses, right? And had this enormous power within to operate and to make a difference. And so we're in the same state of a situation where you need to at least know enough to understand how your world works. If your world is going to be based on 100% information, which it is, I mean, even your refrigerator, your car, your toothbrush, it all has a digital computer in it and it's connected by Wi-Fi, right? The Internet of Things. So if you're going to go that direction and nothing can stop society from going in that direction, then the only option is to be at least minimally aware, minimally literate enough to understand the basics of how the world is functioning around you. Otherwise, you don't. I mean, if you don't care and you're fine to let the world do whatever it wants. But if you want to be a part of society, you want to be an effective part and an informed part of society, then yeah, you are going to have the minimum basics. I've often told people I don't have any children. If I ever did, a lot of people are like, if you had kids, you teach them coding, right? And I was like, no, I wouldn't even buy them a computer. I'd buy them a box full of the parts that might make a computer, and until the kid could put it together himself, he wouldn't have a computer. And that's how I would teach my children. Literally, I want them to build the internet from the ground up themselves, and then it will be forever stuck in their head how all of this shit works, and they'll be empowered to not be buffaloed. If you had a world that right now that was the world I'm describing, guys, you wouldn't have any of this buffoonery about affecting elections with Twitter and Facebook and all of these massive disinformation campaigns. Some of them can be generally effective. You would not have that kind of people. The masses would not be able to be swayed like that. That would be part of that literacy is understanding how all of that works because it all works based on the backbone of the networked civilization that we have. So, um, everything would change. People would no longer be able to be manipulated the way they are all over the world with these information campaigns, and people would also have a lot more transparency because they'd have more. The more you know how to code, the more access you have to information in general. It's just the same as reading. The more you read, the more you know how to read, the more books you can read, right? So same thing with computer. The more you know about how it works, the more information you directly have access to. There are people who genuinely out there have never even heard of Twitter or heard of any of this shit, dude. I talk to them all the time down here. They're legitimate people who are acquaintances of mine in the village down here, in a little village next door to where I live, who legitimately have never logged in for a single minute on the internet and have no clue what you're talking about. They live in a completely different world, but they also have zero effect on their world, none whatsoever. Which is, again, I think I would prefer the latter. I think I would prefer that people be literate in how their world works, even if it means the demystification of people like Commander X and Kevin Mitnick and all of those guys that are out there doing this thing. I'd rather have that. I'd rather have everybody know how to do what I know how to do. And then you end up with a much more democratic world, and I think you also end up with a much more informed and less war-ridden world because I really feel like the problem here is a lot of these leaders. Biden's never logged into email in his life. How can we have a president who's got his finger on the most technologically advanced arsenal in the world, and he literally never has sent an email or received an email in his life? Email makes the world go round. So he is completely locked out of that experience, of that worldview, of any of that. How is this person fit to then run the world? To me, that's really mind-boggling that even exists. So. But as long as you have that disparity, hackers are going to be powerful, good, bad, and the ugly. It doesn't matter what you think of us. We're not gods. We didn't make ourselves gods. society made us gods by creating the entire world to be digital, and not accepting the responsibility that comes with that of understanding what they created. So, in a way, the world literally made the choices that put hackers in the position of being like demigods, being able to strut across the internet, just I'm turning you off, I'm turning you off, and that's it. And there are hackers that have that attitude and do that, and so that impunity that hackers operate with comes directly from society's hell-bent desire to make money and not being very smart about it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll reiterate something that that Jeremy Hammond did last week at the whistleblower event. Jeremy said he did a decade in prison because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. And he had to brag about his shit.
Well, it comes into that, but also I think that what Jeremy's probably digging at a little bit deeper is he could have just fucking flushed everything except the credit card numbers down the toilet. He could have paid his rent and stolen a few thousand, and then just gone his happy way, and they never would have caught him. I think that's more to the point, is that if Jeremy had just, again, it's about choices. Jeremy's heroism stems from what he did in that moment when he's sitting there looking at his desktop and he's got literally the entire archive of Stratford secret archives sitting there on his desktop. And what do I do? And those choices, believe me, I will tell you, you're always going to be tempted. When you realize that there's millions of dollars sitting there if you play it the right way, but maybe not necessarily the ethical way, all of it becomes a very difficult and very heroic choice in my way of thinking. And Jeremy's choice was to dump that shit, and that's what, in the end, cost him. And so, in a way, he's making a lighthearted joke on a topical issue, but he's also reflecting something deeper, that if he could just shut his mouth and done whatever he could to profit from it and then walked away from it, deleted the rest of it, he would have been fine. He wouldn't have done. He went to prison because he spoke out, in a sense. He spoke out with that leak. He dropped that information and said, no, this needs to be seen by the people.
I don't know, man. That's an activist through and through right there, though. I mean,
of course. And,
I don't know. I don't know if that's the route that he was going with that. Yeah, he also maintains that he was drugged at his sentencing.
Now that's entirely possible, because they will force you to take drugs in the jail, and I've seen that numerous times with my own eyes. I've spent a great deal of time in prison and jail myself, and so that's 100%. And actually, they consider that common practice. They drug you before the sentencing so you don't freak out.
All right, we got about.
I got about. Years,
I got about 5, maybe 10 minutes max before we got to get over to the call-in show.
So I think we need to actually pitch the podcast for tomorrow, right? I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I actually got to hop off right now because I got some real quick to do before doing that. But I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in a few, John.
Glory's going to be on the show, guys. Mark, Steve, myself. That's pretty much it. And I'm going to sort of reveal the format of the show, like in the sense that I'm going to sort of try out a rhythm that I want to do every week. But tomorrow's show is going to be topic free. We're going to call it the Friends of X Fireside Chat. It's just a way for me to get my foot back into the live media sort of thing and get used to it again. I've been quiet and private for a year now, guys, all by myself. So this is going to be shocking to my system, no matter what. So having my friends around me to buffer me and support me is kind of the plan. And then going forward, we're going to do it every Saturday, starting at noon Central Time to 4 p.m. That's a long show, but then I'm going to edit it up to about 3 hours and put it on YouTube. Every show will be archived on YouTube afterwards. We're going to stream on Twitch TV. It's twitch.tv/Commander Xenon. If you want to go ahead and pre-follow the Twitch channel, you'll get an extra announcement in Twitch to remind you tune in. And that's it, really. I'm going to do it every week, and I'm taking back over my Twitter account as sort of tangent to that, and I'm going to be working that Twitter account like it was the old days. That's the extent of it, though. I'm going to limit my activities right now to just those two things. I want to be able to commit and actually stick with this, guys. So I'm not taking on any more than the Twitter account and the weekly live stream. Hopefully we can have some good people. We're really hoping for Keith McHenry, who's already said yes for next Saturday. That's going to be a really great show, guys. It's going to be all about the history of food nut bombs. We're going to air as many videos as we can find about it, and then we're going to have Keith on to talk about the original history. The man's a hero 100 times over. He deserves a movie way more, a documentary movie about his life way more than me. So we're going to have him on first, and then that's just going to be kind of the gist of it. We're going to try to pick a topic and a guest every week, and I really want to try to highlight people who I think are not getting as much of the light as they should. That their work is important, but they're try to lift up people maybe who not everybody is talking about and looking at. So maybe shy away from the superstars who already have enough stuff going on for them, and then try to raise up people who are doing incredible epic work, but maybe not getting those interview requests as much as they would. So try to take it from that angle, and that's the plan, guys. So every Saturday, noontime, Central Time, tune in, twitch.tv/Commander Xenon.
Someone asked if you're on YouTube too, but I'm not sure, right?
Well, we're going to use YouTube as the archive. I have a YouTube channel, and I'll announce that on my Twitter as I actually have a show to archive. I'll have a playlist of the shows on YouTube, and I'm going to edit them first to cut out a lot of the, any technical breaks or problems or whatever. Just make them nice, and then load them to YouTube for an archive. So I'm going to do that manually. That's just the way I stream. So I'm going to stream it on Twitch Live, and then probably less than 24 hours later, that episode it'll stay available in its raw form on Twitch for a week, but then I'll also archive it to YouTube. And yes, I do have a YouTube channel, but there's nothing there but puppy videos right now. We won't have a show up until we actually do a show. Yeah, well, you can go look at my dogs if you want. I mean, but yes, I do have.
Do you want to stream it on my YouTube channel tomorrow? Or a different one? We got like 4 different platforms.
That one that we are all assigned to YouTube too.
I'm really a fan.
Oh yeah.
I'm really a fan of Twitch, guys. All of you guys who are on the show.
Fuck
right now,
Bezos.
You already know why I'm a fan of Twitch, and also I know how to do it. I'm real comfortable with it as a format. I'm open-minded to expanding, but let's get through a few shows first. But as you know from our private conversation, I'm super up to speed, let's just say, on Twitch streaming, and so it's really like second hat. It's be really easy to do. But we'll work on it. We'll work on expanding it maybe to other formats and stuff. Let's just see if we can get a couple shows. What we really want, and I'm not going to be ashamed about asking, is we really want you guys out there that are listening right now, and if you listen to it a little bit later, even after we're off the air, just come and listen. That'd be the best thing anybody could do right now. I'd like to get an audience going. I'd like it to be a decent show, and for a decent show, you really need the people. So the best thing you can really do to help me out is just tune in tomorrow. We'd like to have lots of peeps for the first show, and especially the second episode with Keith next Saturday. Love to have everybody tune in for that, and just support it. I'm going to try to do as good a show as I possibly can. So if you've liked my stuff in the past, if you've liked my material and my media in the past, hopefully you will support the show, and we really need you tomorrow to do that. I'm scared as hell. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm nervous as fuck. I'm nervous.
There are people asking for your Twitter, by the way. Just saying real quick.
Yeah, Commander Xenon. It's also same as my Twitch. Both my Twitch and my Twitter are Commander Xenon, all one word.
I put it in the chat.
And hey, Lubers, I gotta get out of here, and I don't know if you can just kill the Rockfin stream, but that needs to die so that we can open up the new one for the call-in show.
Yeah, so I think we covered everything, right? I mean,
Yeah, no, it's great, Mark. Thank you very much for having me. Sorry we missed Tyler. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Glory, for coming by. They pretty much
Hell
stopped
yeah.
in just to sort of support me. Again, I'm really kind of gathering my close friends around me because people I really trust and feel comfortable with. I'm nervous about all this, guys. I won't lie. This whole coming back thing. So it's neat to have my friends around me and all the support.
We'll be gentle with you, darling.
Oh, just for the first couple of times. After that, I'll become loosey goosey, and you can pound the fuck out of me.
All right, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'll see you guys. And if you're listening in the chat, we'll see you in like 10 minutes. Get your shit together. Call-in show. Phone lines open at 8:30 on the West Coast, 11:30 on the East Coast. Love you all very much.
okay, bye bye, guys.
Wow. Down to the hardcores now, right?
Yeah, okay. To listeners, I just want to say, like, please help to share this around. You guys know that we lost Twitter accounts. I lost a big Twitter account myself. We need your help on sharing this around. And find Commander X at Commander X Anon on Twitter, and he will be streaming on Twitch at noon. That is noon your time, right? What is that? What is that for us?
It's noon Central Time. That would be, let's see. So maybe I'm just guessing, guys. You should definitely watch the Twitter, but I'm guessing like 11 a.m. Eastern would be the next time zone over on the other side of me, and then I don't know. Just do the math. Then you just keep. How does it work? No, it's 1 hour later on the East Coast. So it'll be 1 o'clock East Coast, 12 my time, 11 Mountain Time, and maybe 10 Pacific Time. I don't know. That's just my stab at it. But yeah, do the conversion. But it's 12 Central Time in the U.S. And we'll be announcing it well ahead of time on Twitter. I'll be like giving countdowns. I'm usually that way on Twitter. I'll be on in an hour, guys, or I'll be on in 2 hours. So just watch the Twitter, and we should be able to fish you in. You can also pre-follow on Twitch if you're a Twitch person. Like I'm a big Twitch fan, so I've got Twitch on my phone. I get notifications when my favorite streamers go live. You can easily, if you're already into Twitch, then just follow me on the Twitch channel, which is Commander Xenon. And then you'll get the notifications. But we'll try to make sure that as many people get to it as they can. So follow the Twitter, and we'll herd you like cats towards the stream tomorrow. Very excited to have everybody. I hope we can answer a lot of questions from the audience, and really just have a nice, friendly talk about anything we want to talk about. And I want to keep my people, especially I want to reach out to my supporters, anybody who's been a long-time supporter of Commander X. Tune in tomorrow, because we're going to give a rundown of the work that the Friends of X Committee have done. I'm going to really get detailed with the help they've given me. I'm going to show you guys some home videos of where your money has gone. That will be a segment where there'll be a lot of transparency, showing you guys. A lot of people have been very generous to donate to Nat and the Mexicans down here that are supporting me. And so we want to really take a segment where we're going to show you guys where your money went, what it got spent on, and the lifestyle and other things that have been provided for me with that money. And a chance for us to thank all of you again too for doing that. So that will be on there, and then after that we don't really have a topic, but we'll probably also talk about the movie. I know a lot of you are interested in the movie, so you'll be able to ask questions to Mark and them guys in chat. I won't be able to chat so easily, but you'll be able to ask it of them, and they can relay it to me. So yeah. Just try to open myself up a little bit to some questions and stuff about that. Obviously, that's a big thing, and I think people, especially in activism, have a right to question. Are you making money off this? What's the deal? How did this movie thing come about? So you've got fair questions, and I'm ready to be as transparent as I can be about that part of it too. So if that interests you also, then tune in tomorrow. But even if you're just a friend and you don't really care about any of it and you just want to support, just tune in. I could use the company. Like I said, I'm nervous as fuck to get back in the saddle again. So, uh, come hang out with me, and
Oh, I have one
help
more
me be,
question for
help
you,
me be
actually.
strong.
I have one more question because will you be doing like music and stuff too? Because you did that. I was on your show, X Speaks, in the past, remember? And you had like music on and stuff too. Will you be doing that too for this podcast?
Well, I don't want to give it away any spoilers
Okay, okay, okay.
for my show, but I would just point out the simple logic that this is the first time I've ever done this sort of thing in video format. The shows that you speak of were all radio broadcasts. They
Yeah.
were all podcasts with voice only. So I would just leave it at that and let the people out there, and especially the person who asked the question, use your imagination. I mean, I'm media savvy, and I have a whole new dimension to play with called video. So um, I'll try to do some interesting shows. That's all I can say. I don't want to give any spoilers because I hope people will tune in just to see what I do. But
Okay.
thank you. I thank you for the question, and I would just point that out that I'm dealing with a whole awesome a field of endeavor, field of media that I was not previously something I'd ever done or was available to me. So anything's a possibility, right? I mean, we could really have some fun with something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, well, thank you anyway, and yeah, we'll speak tomorrow, I guess. I mean, I'm glad you're back. Seriously.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back. I thank you to all the I just want to close with thanking all the well wishers today, especially my close friends, like I said, Mark and Steve and Glory and others who have gathered around me for this little comeback uh, thing, and also just to thank everybody who tunes in tomorrow. Thank everybody, especially who tunes into Anonymous Bites Back. I have always said this is my favorite show on the internet, and it's an important show. It's vital show. It's where Anonymous speaks to itself. Anonymous media is very important that way because otherwise it's the mainstream media speaking to us. It's the only place you can come where we speak to ourselves. So support Anonymous Bites Back. Watch every single episode you can. Follow whatever Twitter accounts are necessary. I know I can quote one because I have it memorized. Anon Bites Back. That's twitter.com/Anon Bites Back. Follow them as well. This show is vital to the lifeblood of the current movement, and they're doing heroes work. We need to all support each other. Also follow Steve and his shows. I don't have the links for that, but maybe Mark can do me a solid and throw a link to Steve in the whatever chat people are watching right now. But just everybody hang tight, hang together, and realize too, I want to leave you on a positive note. Realize that the world looks really bleak right now, and things look bad. And in a lot of ways, they look worse than they've ever looked in the last 10 years. But I want to tell you that there's hope, and that hope primarily lies in having each other's back, sticking together, loving each other. I didn't realize until this last year how important that was, and that's something that I feel like I was lacking, and I'm going to change. That's going to be different about me. That I really want to emphasize that we need that whole idea of a non-family that has been so lost in the white noise in recent years. We need to bring that back, and we need to start building families and tribes within the movement. Start loving each other, and if you do all those things, we're going to be fine, guys. We're going to win. Persevere, and we will win. And when you're my age and you're talking to your grandchildren, you'll be able to say you were part of that. You were part of making the world a better place for them. It will work. There's no doubt in my mind. I've never doubted that from the beginning, that we have the power to do this. So just be hopeful and be as happy as you can, and come join the show. Maybe it'll be a way that you can release and lighten up and find that hope and happiness. I hope we can share that with you. I hope I can share that with you. Um, it's going to be a little bit of a different X than people remember from the past. I learned a lot in the last year. I went through a lot. I faced death in the eye and won, and now I'm back with a lot of life lessons. And so hopefully, maybe even my fans and supporters who might have found me a little rough around the edges, maybe you'll find a softer, more cuddly X than the past, and I hope so, because I really want people to feel that hope and feel the love for each other, because I think that this is also vital to the revolution. So yeah, be hopeful and come by and watch the show tomorrow. I really would appreciate your support, and I thank you for those who already have supported in every kind of way, financially, whatever. And we'll unbox that a little deeper tomorrow. So come tune in.
Okay, guys. Thanks for listening. And like I said, please help to share it on all social media, not just on like Twitter and Facebook, whatever, wherever you are. But we need the help. Has access. We need our message heard by everyone among anonymous, right? Because we're just unbiased grassroots opinions. I mean, we don't.
Well,
have
hopefully too, because Mark, you're the biggest show. Steve is one of the biggest shows in the movement. I would like to think I'll be an impactful show of my own as well. And it's important for us to show people, the lack of rivalry between our channels, the lack of rivalry between us and our personas, and how we're always constantly pushing each other's material out there. That to me is an important lesson that the OGs can share with the people new coming into the movement, who look around and see nothing but fracturedness and disintegration. Hopefully we can reverse that by showing that there's another way you can do this, and that way is that we all support each other's work, we all laud each other, we all give
fellas.
glory to each other.
I knew he would jump in. I knew he would jump in because we didn't cut off the Rockfin stream yet, and I was worried.
Well, yeah, because we're supposed I mean, it's either that or we push back the show.
Okay, I'm
Oh!
going to. Let's end. We're ending it right now. This second. Don't worry, Steve.
I
Okay.
didn't realize he was waiting
Let's restart that shit though, Sleepy.
This
We're
second,
gonna
this
have
second,
to.
This second, just